techniques that they were already using anyway against other groups, during the war, even before the war, specifically communist groups. But when they initiate the first counterintelligence program, or COINTELPRO as they like to call it, the major target was the Communist Party, USA. And of course, that's going to set the stage for them to then, go after groups like the Socialist Workers' Party in 1961, Ku Klux Klan groups in 1964, the Nation of Islam, which had actually began, decades earlier. Counterintelligence deals with first getting the information and then using the information, or using some type of scheme, some type of program, some type of technique, some type of activity in order to hurt, in order to discredit, in order to disrupt, in order to destroy, or they like to use the term neutralize, which is kind of like an all-encompassing term, which means to weaken to the point that it's no longer a threat. Now, one of the keys to counterintelligence, though, is to plant a seed and then to rely upon people to react to that seed a certain way. And if they give you the reaction that you want, then a lot of times that will accumulate in you achieving your goal. Now, another point that you want to be clear on is that one of the things that counterintelligence has used for a very long time is simply to exploit existing weaknesses of people. Jealousies and envies, personality conflicts, anything that they could use in order to weaken a target.
Chicago also feels that any anonymous letters or calls at this time could possibly identify the source of the information and could, instead of causing disruption, solidify the royal family and Malcolm.
One of the unique things that the Bureau liked to do, which helped to cause division inside the ranks of the leadership of the nation, they would draft a letter that was very critical of Malcolm. And then what they would do is they would then send the letter to some of Malcolm's enemies inside the ranks of the national leadership. So much so that Elijah Muhammad, having received one of them, thought that Malcolm actually wrote the letter. All they wanted was for you to think that this is a legitimate letter, take the information in it seriously, and if it can plant a seed of dissension, if it can plant a seed that could cause some type of division, it was a successful counterintelligence apparatus. Now, something else that the Bureau also did as far as a nation, which was vintage FBI, was they planted newspaper articles.
So perhaps the same tactics were used against the civil rights movement. Heavy infiltration of the ranks, spread the seeds of dissension, then step back and let the blood spill.
I see it, Mr. Chairman, is for this committee to be able to figure out how to persuade the people of this country that indeed it did go on. And how shall we ensure that it never happened again? But it will happen repeatedly unless we can bring ourselves to understand and accept that it did go on. And I say that as one who worked as a United States Attorney with the Bureau and have enormous respect for its capacities in the field of kidnapping, bank robbery, and a lot of other things, but am appalled to learn what if it's correct, the intelligence side of that Bureau was up to for so long.
If we would like to believe that the FBI would do all this viciousness and all of these things to an individual and would stop short of killing him, and we're out of our mind. In America today, if we believe the CIA would deal with foreign assassinations and would not consider it at home, that's like saying the mafia runs crooked gambling tables in South America, but honest ones in America. It just ain't true.
Any kind of activity that takes place on the floor of the Congress or the Senate, that's the government. Any kind of dilly-dallying, that's the government. Any kind of pussyfooting, that's the government. Any kind of act that's designed to delay or deprive you and me right now of getting full rights, that's the government that's responsible. And anytime you find the government involved in a conspiracy to violate the citizenship or the civil rights of a people, then you are wasting your time going to that government expecting redress. You're going to his court expecting him to correct the problem. He created the problem. He's the criminal. You don't take your case to the criminal, you take your criminal to court and accuse it of genocide and all of the other crimes that it is guilty of today.
So what you and I have got to do is get involved. You and I have to be right there breathing down their throat. Every time they look over their shoulder, we want them to see us.
You're living at a time of extremism, a time of revolution, a time when there's got to be a change. People in power have misused it, and now there has to be a change, and a better world has to be built, and the only way it's going to be built is with extreme methods. And I, for one, will join in with anyone, don't care what color you are, as long as you want to change this miserable condition that exists on this earth. Thank you.
In order to find out why this is all happening, we need to go back in time and look at the first modern assassination.
You see, there are two kinds of law. This is a subject I love. I've been talking about this for years. There are two kinds of law on the earth that rule the whole world, but most people don't know that. All over the world, all governments are ruled by what is called civil law. Civil law goes back to a Latin word, civili, which goes back to the word illi. Oh God, I mean, we could go on for hours on this stuff. Civil law, which is called in all countries the law of the land. So you'll say, well, you can't do that because that's against the law of the land. The law of the land is civil law, Roman civil law, the law of the land. But there is a second law which also operates all over the earth identical. It's called UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. That is the law of God in the world of business. I don't care if you're in Japan, in Africa, in China, in Istanbul, Turkey. If you have a company, if you have a corporation, if you are doing business where you buy and sell and make money, you are operating on this earth under something called UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. Because if all countries worked on a different commercial code, then nobody could do business with anybody. You couldn't trust Japan to pay you. Japan couldn't trust America to pay them for the cars, because everybody has their own laws. Under the Caesars of Rome, they established under Caesar that all nations in the empire that do business, everybody plays on a level field. If you do business in Africa with China, you pay them. And if Africa does business with American companies, you pay them. You pay whatever it is you're doing business. You don't mess around. The most severe law in this world is called UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. It's the Bible of business on the earth. Uniform Commercial Code. Uniform Commercial Code is based directly on Vatican canon law, on the Roman canon law. Consequently, when a ship pulls into port, it pulls in and stops, and it's called in its berth. The ship is now in its berth. Because it is on the law of the high seas, or commercial maritime, UCC commercial law rules the seas. So when the ship pulls into its berth, the first thing the captain must do is to present a certificate of manifest to the port authorities, which means that the port authorities need to know how much is on this ship that you're bringing into our country and our economy. How many TVs, how many cars, whatever you're bringing, how much are you bringing into our economy. So you have to have a certificate of manifest of what is the value of your ship here. What are you doing? Consequently, when you are born, you come out of your mother's water. Therefore, you must have a birth certificate, a certificate of manifest, because you are a corporation-owned item. You are a human resource. This goes back to the German Nazi concept that every human coming out of their mother's water must be birthed. And therefore you have to have a certificate, a manifest, to see how much this individual is going to make for us in our new world order. I'm telling you that until you understand the laws, the symbols, the emblems, what these words mean, you're never going to suspect how far gone we really are. Did you know, for instance, that your birth certificate is a security on the stock exchange in the New York stock market? Did you know that? Because if you order your birth certificate, get a new one, order your birth certificate, it'll only cost you, sometimes it's free, it'll only cost you a few dollars. Order your birth certificate. On your birth certificate, all birth certificates in this country, on the bottom, it will tell you this is printed on security papers. Do not accept if not on full color security paper. Then on the right hand corner, you will always have a series of numbers, red numbers, printed on the birth certificate. Those numbers are a security stock exchange number on the World Stock Exchange. You go to any good stock office and ask them, check these numbers in your computer and see how much your stock is worth, the certificate. And they will check it on the New York Stock Exchange and find your birth certificate is a stock on the stock exchange in America. Why? Because you are worth money to the international bank that bought you in 1930. We need to wake up. This is serious stuff.
Most of the human race is unaware that we are currently going through a global crisis, as the control and corruption of the American government has been happening for so long without a single human being on planet Earth being able to do anything about it. In order to understand the reasons behind this, we must go back in time and examine the birth of the United States, which is also a privately owned company. We must also examine several key subjects and have a general understanding of these issues before you can fully comprehend why this government and its intelligence agencies are doing everything in their power to keep this information from reaching your ears.